Factoring quadratic equations. When you are asked to solve a quadratic equation, you must first start by finding the factors for the quadratic equation. We are going to look at several ways of finding the factors of a quadratic equation in this video. There is common factoring, the difference of squares, perfect squares trinomial, decomposition, quadratic formula. So let's start. What do we know? A quadratic function has a degree of 2. Factoring quadratic equations will provide you with the values of the x-intercepts. Remember, however, that not every quadratic equation will have x-intercepts. So let's start with number 1, difference of squares. Let's look at the characteristics of this particular equation. So we notice that we have a perfect square on the left side. We have a perfect square on the right side, and they're separated by a minus sign. Minus means difference, and we have 2 squares. So in this method, there are 2 terms. Both terms are perfect squares separated by subtraction. To factor this, take the square root of the first number, x squared, and then the square root of the second number, 16. Put these answers inside 2 brackets with the negative sign between the 2 in the first bracket to get x minus 4, and the plus sign between the other 2 numbers, x plus 4. The next method is the perfect square trinomial. If you take the last term, the third term, take the square root of that number and multiply it by 2, you will get the middle term. So if we, for example, have 9 as our third term, the square root of 9 is 3. 2 times 3 is equal to 6. Factor x squared plus 6x plus 9. In this type of question, divide the middle term by 2 and then square the result. This means that we would take 6, divide by 2 and get 3. Then we would take 3 squared and get 9. If this result 9 is the value of the third term, then the factors are x plus 3, x plus 3. We can also write this as x plus 3 squared. Now, you could also have x squared minus 6x, and then our factors would be x minus 3. If the result 9 does not equal the third term, then you need to try the next method. Method 3, solve by factoring. In this example, we're going to factor x squared plus 6x minus 7. It's not a difference of squares. It's not a perfect square trinomial. So what we will do now is we will find 2 numbers that add to get the last term, negative 7, but also add to get positive 6. One number is negative, one number is positive, and the larger number will be the positive. So since the middle number is plus 6, the largest number is plus. 7 is also a prime number, so the only factors can be 7 and 1. Let's test. Plus 7 minus 1 is plus 6. Test these values. 6 is the middle term. It works. The factors are plus 7 and minus 1, written as x plus 7 times x minus 1. Let's try another example. So in this example, we have x squared plus 8x plus 15. The third term is 15, which is positive. The second term is plus 8. Since the third term is positive, both terms have the same sign. Since the second term is positive, both terms are positive. Let's try some numbers. 15 and 1 doesn't equal 8. 3 and 5, it does equal 8. So we know our factors are x plus 3 and x plus 5. Try this third example. It's a little more difficult because there's a number in front of the x squared. So factor 2x squared plus 8x minus 42. Since the first number starts with 2, look for a common factor. Well, if we look at 8 and 42, we know those two numbers can also be divided by 2. So 2 is the common factor. So we'll take it out and rewrite x squared plus 4x minus 21. Now factor inside the brackets. Now factor the inside brackets. X squared plus 4x minus 21. Find two numbers that multiply to get negative 21, but add to get plus 4. Since negative 21, we know the signs of the factors are different. The middle term will be positive as the middle number is positive. Try plus 21 and negative 1. Doesn't work. Try negative 3 and plus 7. Oh, yes, that adds up to plus 4. So our factors would be x minus 3, x plus 4, but don't forget the 2. So the factors then of 2x squared plus 8x minus 42 is equal to 2 times x minus 3 and x plus 7. Quadratic functions method 4, decomposition. If you cannot easily factor using method 2, try method 3. If method 3 doesn't work, try method 4. Here is an example. 12x squared plus 4x minus 21. There is not a common factor in each term. Start by multiplying the number of the first term by the number in the third term. So 12 times negative 21 is negative 252. Take the second digit, plus 4. Find two numbers that multiply to get negative 252, but add to get plus 4. So let's look at some of the factors. And when we work them out, we find that we end up with 4 and 18. Plus 18 minus 14 is plus 4. So break down the middle term into these two numbers that we found. 12x squared plus 18x minus 4x minus 21. Then what we'll do is we will divided into two parts, factor the first part, factor the second part. So we will get 12x squared plus 18x is the first group, plus second group, negative 14x minus 21. When we look at the first group, we see that 6x is common, so we'll put that at the front, and we're left with 2x plus 3. When we look at the second, we get minus 7, and we get again 2x plus 3. So now we know that 2x plus 3 is the common factor. So we have 6x minus 7 times the common factor, 2x plus 3. Therefore, the factors of 12x squared plus 4x minus 21 is 6x minus 7 times 2x plus 3. But what if we still can't find the factors? Then we would use the quadratic formula. If we take our equation and we write it in what's called standard form, which is ax squared plus bx plus c, we're given the quadratic formula, which is y equal minus b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. To see how the quadratic formula works, try this example. Factor 2x squared minus 12x minus 14. Now, in looking at this, we could use the common factor, but we'll just want to work with the quadratic formula. But to make it easier to work, divide each term by 2. And we will get 2 times x squared minus 6x minus 7. Now use the quadratic formula. A is 1, b is negative 6, and c is negative 7. Using the quadratic formula continued, we know that the values that we found, a is equal to 1, b is equal to negative 6, and c is equal to negative 7. We will substitute these into the quadratic formula, minus b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So we will get minus 6 plus or minus the square root of minus 6 squared minus 4 times 1 times minus 7 divided by 2 times 1. This will then give us negative times negative 6 plus or minus 64 divided by 2, which will work it out to be x is equal to 7 and x is equal to negative 1. So in conclusion, our factors are, don't forget the 2 times x minus 7 and x plus 1. Note the change in sign. X equal to 7, we will move the 7 to the left to get the factor, and it would become x minus 7. Now it's your turn.